Hi, everybody. Thanks to all of you who are joining us from home tonight. It's great to have you with us. And we look forward to giving you an opportunity to ask some questions too at the end if we don't cover them in the conversation. So please feel free to write those down and hold on to those at the end. We'll have an opportunity for you to put them in the Q&A section. So thank you so much for joining us for tonight's Artists in Conversation, Apprenticeship to Mastery. My name is Hannah Joyce. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of our Professional Resources and Education program at Playwright Center. And I have had the distinct pleasure of running the Core Apprentice program since I started at the Playwright Center back in 2013. Some of these folks who've joined us, especially Abbey and Zola, came to the Playwright Center a number of years ago, and JC is a more recent Core Apprentice. So we'll get to know them here in a second. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Playwright Center is on the traditional land of the Dakota people, and we also honor the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe people of this land. We offer our gratitude for this land, for the privilege of gathering and sharing stories, and for the work of Native and Indigenous activists, past, present, and future, who steward this land and challenge us to be partners rather than owners. Playwright Center is working to decolonize our spaces and practices, to remove systemic barriers faced by Native people, and to move toward addressing reconciliation. You can read more about our land acknowledgement on our website, and we'll put that in the chat. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. I'll start with Abbey Fenbert, who joined us back in 2015 and 16 as a Core Apprentice playwright. Abbey holds an MFA in playwriting from Boston University and a BA from NYU. Her original plays have been produced and developed by Theater Novi Most, Matrix Theater Company, Red Theater in Chicago, Northern Illinois University, the Great Plains Theater Conference, Boston Playwrights Theater, the No Theater, the Berkshire Playwrights Lab, the Vagrancy, the Playwright Center of Minneapolis, and the Playwrights Union of Los Angeles. Her plays Sickle and Child were finalists for the O'Neill National Playwrights Conference, and her short dramatic works are published in anthologies from Smith and Krause. She is currently a news editor for the Kyiv Independent. Zola Dee, who was with us in 2017 and 18, is a playwright, screenwriter, and performer whose works are deeply invested in exploring Black Americana, African diasporic religions, and imagining freer worlds for the Black collective body. Her plays include Gunshot Medley, Smile, Goddammit, Smile, Homegoing and Father. Other accomplishments include 2025 through 28 Jerome Hill Fellow, 2023 I Am Soul National Black Theater Resident Playwright, and Jerome Fellow in 2022-23, and a Many Voices Fellow 2021-22, and a CTG Writers Workshop from 2019 to 2020. Zola is a graduate from California Institute of the Arts with a BFA in acting and a minor in creative writing. She's currently represented by WME and managed by Stefan Rich. For more information, go to zoladee.com. And finally, JC Pankratz, who was with us in 2022 and 23. JC is a trans and queer writer making plays about the body, power, and the more than human world. They have been a Core Apprentice with Playwright Center, a writing fellow with the Playwrights Realm, and a visionary playwright with Theater Masters. They are a proud member of Theater Workers for a Ceasefire and join culture workers across the globe in demanding liberation for Palestine. So let's talk first about what the Core Apprentice program is. It is the one program that the Playwright Center facilitates that's strictly for student playwrights or recent grads within the past year. And it comes out of our New Plays on Campus program, which is a membership program for colleges and universities all around the country. And the university itself joins the program, and then the students have access to all of the membership resources and benefits. Um, and it also gives them the opportunity to apply for the core apprenticeship. The core apprenticeship itself includes a year-long mentorship with a playwright or theater artist who can be instrumental at the time that the core apprentice is with us. So we ask them, what are you working on? What kind of mentorship are you looking for? Who would be a dream mentor? And then we pair them with someone who fits for them for that year. But I'm going to ask you all when we get to it how those mentorships have impacted your life and if they've continued on since. Um, and then at the culmination of their time with us, we bring them out for a week-long play development workshop where they are paid to be in workshop because playwrights should be paid when they are working. And they get to work with a director, dramaturg, actors, and spend 12 hours at the Playwright Center working on the play of their choice. And those plays can be at any stage. I remember when Zola came, you didn't even have a full script, which was really exciting. Um, and then they have a membership with the Playwright Center for a couple of years after that, and they are affiliated writers with us forever and ever after their time with us. So any writer who comes through any of our programs, our fellowship programs, our core writer programs, our core apprentice programs, are affiliated writers with the center and have a lot of opportunities to engage with us and the playwrights we support all over the world, our member playwrights, and in lots of different ways after they are on fellowship with us. And we'll talk about how JC Pankratz had an opportunity as an affiliated writer to continue working with the Playwright Center this past year. Some of the mentors who have worked with our core apprentice playwrights over the years have included Pearl Clegg, David Henry Wong, Daniel Alexander Jones, Dominique Morisseau, Jen Silverman, and Quy Nguyen. So I will stop talking about this program. If people have questions, they can ask more about it at the end. But I would love to hear from the three of you about how you first heard about this program. Anyone can start, unless you want me to select you.
I
JC. Oh, Zola, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I can start. As you read in my bio, I was actually an actor at California Institute of the Arts, and around my third year is when I wrote Gunshot Medley, and it kind of like popped off at school at the New Works Festival at school, and going into my senior year. I knew I didn't want to take the traditional route as an actor. I knew that there was more to my artistry. And so I actually requested at the time, she was not a known playwright yet, but I had requested, because at CalArts you actually get to have like a mentor. And I requested that Alicia Harris be my mentor because she was working at CalArts at the time. And she was the one who was like, you should apply for this. So I actually knew nothing about the Playwright Center if it wasn't for Alicia Harris. Yeah, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at right now, but that's how I heard about it.
That's a great story. I love that. Abby, how did you hear about the core apprenticeship program?
Yeah, I was doing my MFA at the time. I was in graduate school at BU, in playwriting, and so uh, our head of our department, Kate Snodgrass, she alerted us all to the many resources of the Playwrights Center, and I think I don't some it was kind of a long time ago, so now I don't know if my timeline is right, but I think we had like student access to the like opportunities board and things like that. I think that was before the apprenticeship. And so it was already kind of a really great resource and um, sort of something that we were urged to look into. I think I accidentally like sent an inquiry to like the core writer program, and probably Hannah was like, actually, I think you mean the apprenticeship program. So it's very helpful, steered for the right application, because there are actually so many programs center. It's such a incredible resource, but this was the first interaction I had with it.
How about you, JC?
I think that I um found out about it through, I think for a couple of years of my MFA, I had access to the opportunities board, Playwright Center website through the Kennedy Center, actually. Through getting like submitting to the Kennedy Center and getting stuff. And then that membership is included in there, which is such a great thing. And so I want to say that's actually where I found out about it. I think I also ended up hearing about it from like faculty, because I also went to BU for my MFA. Abby, that's so funny.
But
Uh, I'm sure they taught reminded us about it. Maybe it was sort of a chaotic time because it was sort of during the pandemic. But yes, let's say that everybody talked about it. But yeah, that was how I found out about it too and applied.
I love it. So we've heard some of you talking about the resources of the Playwright Center through the New Plays on Campus program, which includes a play submission opportunities database. And that's really one of the things that we work really hard to curate this database of opportunities all over the country and even internationally so that people can find places to submit their plays. So they're not just sending their plays off to theaters that will not read them, but actually organizations that are looking for plays. And so if folks don't know that we have this resource, I can tell you, I just looked at it the other day, and there are over 270 current play submission opportunities right now. So yeah, definitely utilize it. But that is one of the resources that our student members also have access to. Were there other things that, let's see. Yeah, so can we talk a little bit about where you all were in your artistic journey when you applied for the core apprenticeship? JC, you want to start?
Sure. So I was right at the end of my time in uh grad school. It was actually like my last year. My program was sort of interesting in that at the time, in the last year, you didn't take any classes. We just took turns having like a workshop production of a thesis. And so um my time with the apprenticeship was sort of like during that last year, and then I graduated early. So um it was like very much at like kind of like a big transition time. I think which was just really, it was also just interesting for me. Like I was like the oldest person in my grad program. And so, um, I was sort of like having kind of a big shift in terms of thinking about like I had gone to grad school because I was like, I have to find a way to stop working. I was like 31, and I was just like, I have just been working for like the last 11 years, and it's very hard to cultivate this part of me. And so I was able to go to grad school and stop working. And then it was suddenly like, this is about to be over. So I have to start like figuring all that out again. And so I felt really lucky to sort of have it during that last year, because it was such a weird year where I like was in school, but wasn't in school, but also and so it was great to have during that time.
How about for you, Zola?
Yeah, like I kind of was saying in that first question, like I was an actor, and I was like a writer in acting school. But I started shifting when I just realized that I am not the person to keep driving to Hollywood and doing auditions. I was like, this will drive me insane if I have to do this for the rest of my life. And so I started, once that play kind of like blew up, and the staff at the school actually were like, we need to take this to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So there was like a move to take it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and kind of like develop myself as a writer. And I never really saw myself as a playwright. I was just like, I want to respond to this very specific issue. And the best way I know how to do that is through the theater. I think in that way, that is really what like spawned me. And I will say, what was interesting is like, again, I didn't know anything about the Playwright Center, but once I was accepted into the core apprenticeship, I was in my last year of school. That's when I started actually using the database. And just being able to see that database, it made me realize, oh, there's so many opportunities out there that I can actually start taking this seriously. I actually can be a playwright, which is funny because now I'm way more a playwright than I would actually say I am an actor nowadays. But yeah, I would say that database is what opened me up to really realizing that there's so many opportunities out there for playwrights.
I love that. Abby, how about for you? Oh, I think Abby's frozen. I did hear that there were storms. Oh, are you back, Abby?
I'm trying. Yeah, I am having some occasional glitching, but I'm trying to see if my hotspot's more reliable than.
I know. The weather. The weather.
It's the weather completely. Although it's not storming at this very moment, so that's good. I did my apprenticeship the year after grad school. So it was a great time because sort of like JC was saying, they're going through a transition. I was very much in transition and I was in a completely new city and um having a I don't know, like it was a bit of a struggle, and so it was a wonderful thing to be grounded in, and um to have like the mentor was local, could show me around, and then to have this thing to be working towards, um and not just sort of feel like I had all these years to focus on theater and then flailing around. So that's where I was. I was fresh out of graduate school, living on my own, just sort of, you know, gig economy working and trying to figure out what it looked like to have a writing life and not be a student. Uh, which it would turn out it will be a lifelong project doing that. But but that was yeah, a really helpful anchor to me at that time.
I love how you're all kind of in a different moment in your artistry as you're coming to the Playwright Center for the first time in these core apprentice roles. And it does often for many people coming from different you all came from grad programs. We've also had students coming from undergraduate programs, and it was their first workshop ever, or their first mentorship, and it for them felt like, oh, this legitimizes me in a way that I hadn't felt encouraged in before. Here I am with another playwright who's in an MFA program, and I'm having this, experience that is the same and different. But I think I think it can be a beautiful bridge, and certainly a way to encourage folks to keep going. And what could your life be, if you commit to this to some degree?
I would just also add, yeah, I was an undergrad. I wasn't in grad school. And then I would also say I misspoke. I applied my senior year, but it was my year out where like all of the mentorship. So my year out of school was where all of that mentorship took place.
Yeah, I love that. Every year when we have, undergrads and grads both kind of coming through the program, I think this is why this program is so unique and really beautiful, because it's really about the mentorship and about supporting you all as artists. It's not, oh, this person has the best play, um, or they're the rising star. It really does look at each of you as artists and say, how can we support you? And actually, it feels like the Playwright Center could really support you this year where you are in your trajectory. So that's always really exciting to me every year. Can each of you talk about your mentorships? Who was your mentor and what you got out of that time with them? And if you feel like it's had an impact on your journey. And then lastly, like these are lots of questions, so if you forget, let me know. But have any of those relationships continued? Abby, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, my mentor was the playwright and screenwriter Sarah Gubbins. And what was great about the mentorship for me is I was living in LA and I had never lived in LA, and knew very few people and was like very overwhelmed. And she like, sent me to plays and took me out to drinks and to meet her playwright friends. And we went into parties and like, I sort of felt like I had an introduction into sort of the theater scene and the art scene. And we had some good like talks about what I wanted to do and what I was interested in and who my network was. And we didn't develop like a lifelong collaboration of any kind, but it was like for that moment in my life, a really helpful um, base of support for me.
That sounds really fun. Now everybody's gonna want Sarah Gubbins for their mentor, just to like take them around and introduce them to everybody.
Not like every week or anything, but just like,
Sarah, um, JC, would you like to talk about your mentorship?
Sure. My mentor was Jen Silverman. Um, and it was like we talked a lot about actually like um how to like make a living as a playwright. And we talked a lot about like what they had done. Um, I remember just because, again, just sort of like referencing to where I was in my transition, that was the thing I felt like the biggest anxiety about was like, am I just going to kind of go back into having to like work too much to stay alive on this earth, the thing we're all thinking about all the time. Um, and we had like great conversations about like, I don't like really practical stuff, honestly, like different kinds of income, like how to apply for grants, things that like we were not really talking about in my program because we were talking about, I don't know, craft and stuff like that. We weren't really talking about, and especially because like at that time, like I don't know, like I would say something I really like a goal I had for myself was like part of the reason I want to get an MFA is because I want to be able to teach at the college level. Um, and that is just like those opportunities are just like non-existent now because of the way that like academia has changed since the pandemic and like funding and things like that is really difficult to get hired even as like an adjunct unless you want to move to like a very rural area. And so like talking a lot about like really practical things. Like they also talk to me because like Jen is a playwright, they're a screenwriter. They also have written like novels and books. And so we talked a lot about like cultivating many different types of writing and how they inform each other, which was really interesting, kind of like a multidisciplinary look. Cause I was like, I feel so invested in playwriting, but like it seems like it's really useful to be able to do some of these other things. And so that was really great. And uh, Jen like still emails me occasionally, like if I like win something or get an opportunity, like they'll email me, which is really kind of them. Just yeah, but it was very informative. And I'm grateful for that time with them.
How about you, Zola?
Yeah, so my mentor was Dominique Morisseau. I pronounce Dominique that way because I swear I've heard her say it a million times. And now, but the funny thing, it's been so long since I've seen her. I'm like, am I gaslighting myself? Does she pronounce it Dominique or Dominic? But anyway, she was my mentor. And it was interesting because I remember her kind of saying like, something to the effect of like, yeah, I'm not gonna like read your scripts. I mean, if I had sent it to her, she probably would have. But she was like, that's not the kind of mentorship I'm going to really offer you. What she did do was kind of like bring me into the fold. So we would have dinner together and kind of like chat, and she would answer a lot of questions I had about what it means to be a playwright, how to make money as a playwright, what things to apply for. She would put me in contact with a lot of different folks across LA. At the time, I was living in LA, and she was living in LA I think she was working on Shameless at that time. And it was really interesting too because she was working on writing during her day job was writing for TV. But then when she was writing her plays, she was also working on Ain't Too Proud. So it was going up at the Amundsen, and so I was sitting in on those rehearsals, and I remember like they were rehearsing, and the director, I cannot remember his name right now, but he, did like, is the director of like Jersey Boys, so big time Broadway director. And he was like, we're sitting, he's like asking me, he was like, so what do you think about this? Like, what is your opinion about that? So it really did bring me into the fold. And another funny thing is like just by her kind of like letting me kind of like join her in these things, there was a reading she did also at the Pasadena Playhouse. And so she did this reading at the Pasadena Playhouse. I ended up working in their box office. And then like a year afterwards, their community and engagement person ended up leaving. And I was like, oh, I work in the box office, but I want to apply for this job. Also, you met me at Dominique Morisseau's to the artistic director. So it's like funny when you look back like on life because there's so many weird little, instances. And again, it's like, had Dominique not been like, I'm going to take you to everything and you're going to come to my readings and my rehearsals. Yeah, I also am like, maybe I wouldn't have had that job at the Pasadena Playhouse because Danny and Dominique were really good friends. And so Danny Feldman kind of was like, oh, Dominique, I think I can trust you. But yeah.
I love hearing about how each of these was a different kind of mentorship. And even Zola, as you were saying, I'm not going to read your plays, but this is what I can do for you. And I also really appreciate that about the mentorships. They're very specific. We ask each of you, what are you looking for? And I actually remember you, Zola, saying, I'm trying to figure out how to be a playwright in LA and also maybe write for TV. I haven't done that before. And could you find somebody who is like bridging these two things successfully? So to be able to really connect you all with folks who can do this, in the way that you really specifically need it. It's not just like, we're going to read a play and then we're going to, I think that's really special. Well, can we talk about your workshops? Would you all tell us a little bit about the plays you were working on, what that workshop was like for you, if it was surprising or different than other workshops you had been in, and just like how it impacted your play? Like what was the result of that workshop for you? So do you mind starting?
Yeah, so I was workshopping Gunshot Medley uh, during that time. And it was so funny because you were like, you didn't even have a finished script. And I was like, what is she talking about? Like, I did have a finished script. And now remembering that time, because again, it's been like almost 10 years. What had happened was I had written a part one of Gunshot Medley. And I was like, I'm going to write a part two. And so when I came into my workshop, I was like, I'm going to write part two, but I only had scraps of part two or little bits and pieces of the part two. And it was funny because in that workshop is when I kind of realized like I actually think part one, even though it's running at like 60 minutes, so it's in this weird gray area of like, is it a full night of theater? I think it is just that. And as someone who was an actor, and because I went to Cal Arts, I'm very used to like a more experimental or a workshop type environment, but not as a playwright. So this was also like my first time going into a workshop as a playwright. I didn't know what to expect, but it was really beautiful to actually realize through that process, no, I don't need to add on to this play, at least not right now. Like, I don't need to add on to this play right now. I'm just going to work on what I already have and refine what is working on the page.
Abby, tell us about your workshop.
Yeah. So the play I wrote is a play called Sickle, which is set during the Ukrainian Holodomor, which is a historical genocide from the 1930s under Stalin against the Ukrainian peasantry and culture. And it was my thesis play at BU. Like JC was saying, we have our thesis year where all we do is our workshop production. So I had actually just gone through like a workshop production of the play, but kind of like while I was writing it, and it was all like students, student actors, and another MFA director, and all kind of an all student production. And I when I started grad school, I was coming back from the Peace Corps, which was in Ukraine. And while I was in grad school, um, the what is now known as like the Euromaidan Revolution, and then the 2014 Russian invasion of the East and annexation of Crimea happened. And I had just been like living there with a host family and working in a school for like 3 years, and I was quite traumatized by these developments. And had ended up starting to work on this play. And um, for me, it was like very emotional. Even though it was about a different historic moment, it was felt very connected to the present moment. But it was like very hard play to write. It's this like all female ensemble of five set in a Ukrainian village in the 1930s, and it's about genocide. So it's kind of rough, and I was trying to like figure it out um artistically at the same time as trying to figure it out historically and politically and culturally and linguistically and all of these things. And the team I worked with in at BU was great, and it was a great experience. But I was all often like taking on this role of like translator, dramaturg, kind of explaining history, and it felt, and I didn't want it to just be like an important play about history, I wanted to be very, you know, check all of these artistic boxes and all of these things. So it was just sort of difficult, and I still wanted to work on it. And that was what I applied for with the apprenticeship, and my workshop ended up being the Playwright Center connected me to Lisa, who works with Theater Novi Most, which is a company that specializes in the stories of like the Slavic world. Um, and that was so awesome for so many reasons, but it really allowed me to kind of be the writer and not just like the historical cultural translator, and really sort of got to see someone really confident in that world take on how to talk about it with the actors and how to, I don't know, kind of get beyond kind of the layers of sort of cultural and historical mystery and into kind of bringing the play to life. And so, yeah, that was a great experience, and I was really appreciative for the Playwright Center sort of being that thoughtful with who they found, and also having like adult actors, which this isn't to say nothing about student actors, but some of those roles were people that have lived very intense lives, and so sort of getting to see that embodied by people with life experience was also really great.
Yeah, I really do appreciate the quality of artists in the Twin Cities. Um, Theater companies, directors, actors, dramaturgs, puppets, makers of all kinds. It's extraordinary to be able to have something so specific like your play and be able to find a company that is just right. And Lisa Channer, who you mentioned, a director who's just so spot on for that workshop. So shout out to the Twin Cities art scene.
Yeah,
Um,
also it was my first time in the Twin Cities, and I like walked around like this like the whole time. I was like, where what is this? I was just back last month and I felt the same way. Eventually, I will be living there. Every time I go there, I'm like, should I move here?
yeah, you should. The winters keep people away, but really everybody should live here. Um, Before we have you, JC, talk, I just want to encourage folks, if you're thinking about questions that you'd like to ask, please start putting those in our Q&A. There's a little Q&A button at the top, at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we'll get to your questions soon. JC, will you talk to us about your workshop and what your time with the Playwrights Center was like a couple years back?
Yeah, so I think this workshop, it was my first, I would say, like, professional workshop as a playwright. I had applied with the same play that I ended up workshopping there, which has gone through like a bunch of title changes. But at the time was called King of Brando and was about these two college students. It's a two-hander who are double cast in the role of Stanley Kowalski at their historically all women's college. Um, and one of them is one is like a young cis woman, and the other student is like a trans and non-binary person, and it's like 2013. And so it's sort of like them trying to figure out how to make this character happen together. And something that was really interesting about my process is I had written this play using a streetcar named Desire, like literally using that. And when I brought it to the Playwright Center, the folks who I was working with there were like, "You should not do this because the Williams estate is really litigious." Um, and they are like not gonna be like it did not actually seem like I would be able to use that like source material. So I spent a bunch of time beforehand, um and during the workshop, like writing a fake streetcar named Desire for these students to play, which was like really interesting, and was just like a very specific way that the Playwright Center helped me. I certainly like the artists of the Twin Cities are so great. We worked with some really great actors, a great dramaturg as well. That was really nice. But yeah, I would say that that is sort of, that's like the main thing I remember working on. And I remember it was because like the Playwright Center was like, I think you should think about this. And it was like, it's something that can like preserve the life of the play after we were done working on it.
Before we get to questions from the audience, I want to ask each of you to talk about like some kind of cool things happened after your core apprentice productions for a couple of you, and as an affiliated writer coming back to the Playwright Center and having a play in the public season. Zola, do you want to talk about what happened next with Gunshot Medley?
Yeah, so I had the core apprentice, and after that, it was actually there was a actor who was wanting to transition into directing in Los Angeles. His name was Deshaun Terry, and he had actually reached out to me and one other writer. And he wanted to start this company, and reached out about our plays. So he had a reading in Los Angeles that led to the other playwright kind of just dropping out. So it was just going to be my play. And they partnered Deshaun with his company, Collaborative Artist Block. They partnered with Rogue Machine. Rogue Machine put it up in Hollywood. It sold out or ran so well that they ended up relaunching it, like I think this summer after it originally went up. So it went up like in the fall of 2017, and then they put it back up the summer of 2018 at the Electric Lodge. And it was funny, like that kind of introduced me to the LA theater world. It's what was my calling card to get into the Center Theater Group, writers group. And we were chugging along in the Center Theater Group writers group, and then COVID happened, and I realized I needed a change in my life, so I applied for the Many Voices. And with the Many Voices, that's kind of what led me to moving to Minnesota. And I've applied for other fellowships through the Playwright Center, have gotten those. Now I'm a fellow or resident playwright with the National Black Theater, Anna Jerome Hill, fellow in spoken word, theater and performance. So yeah, it's again, I keep this whole conversation just keeps making me realize, wow, this thing led to that thing and that led to another. And now we're here. Now I am part of the Minneapolis community. I work at Metropolitan Regional Arts Council as a program officer. Yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling now.
Oh, I love it. I
What I'm
love
hearing is we should all move to Minneapolis. Okay.
What did I say, Abby? Zola says it too.
I will say I shout out to the person from Pasadena. Love and miss LA so much, but I will say there are lots of opportunities in Minneapolis. There are lots of opportunities in Minneapolis.
Abby, do you want to share what happened next with Sickle? Recently, even.
Yeah. So nothing happened immediately. But I, had other things I was working on, but Sickle did end up having its premiere in Chicago in 2018, 27, its professional premiere, 2018, I think. And that was sort of random. Like I wrote like a funny listicle on the internet and it was about theater, and that's how the theater company like reached out and they were like, yeah, we'd like to read a play or two. And they were like, we'd like to do this. So it is, I don't know. Things do lead to things that you would never expect. And it's circuitous, and you never quite know when or how something will take shape. A play can live forever. Um, but it was also very helpful at that time to have the experience of the Playwright Center workshop. And then also, like, Lisa did not forget about the play, and in just like maybe an upsetting geopolitical element to it, but in 2022, they were doing, which was, the large scale invasion of Ukraine. They were doing a lot of series of Ukrainian writers and readings of Ukrainian playwrights. And they sort of reached out and they were like, we think Sickle could have a place in our upcoming work as well, if you would be open to that. And I was like, yeah, okay. Sure. But sort of it was a sort of overwhelming time and didn't really think much of it. Um, but then it ended up coming to fruition, and Theater Novi Most found a place in their season, and they found like the actor that they really wanted for a specific part, and sort of worked it around her schedule, and like sort of made it work. So the production went up in May, just this past May. And, it was a play that I first started writing in 2013, 2014. Um, and then sort of had this like really beautifully and thoughtfully produced production by a company that was very like committed to the story in a very sincere way, and brought in Ukrainian musicians, and they brought in a Ukrainian translator and had the play in Ukrainian, and just brought in sort of partner organizations, and it was a really beautiful experience, and truly like the seed was the core apprenticeship. Like that is the nexus of that connection. um and also like when they reached out about doing the play, I knew I trusted them with it, um and knew it was like the right people to share that, and who would produce that, even though I couldn't be in the room every day. So yeah, that was a very exciting thing to emerge over time through this. But that's how the connection goes. And I think like what sort of to Zola's point, that's like how so many things end up working in the arts world. Probably in every subculture, but certainly in ours.
Yeah, and also kind of encouraging too, when things don't come to fruition, even as you were saying, you were talking about like, oh, sure, yeah, I'll include my play, but you didn't expect maybe it to come to fruition as you said, and you were sort of surprised that these things sometimes take years, and you don't know what the life of it will be, but you continue to make and tell the stories that are important to you, and the universe just provides.
The
Jason,
Playwright Center of Minneapolis provides.
the Playwright Center. But we work together. We're very good collaborators with the universe, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. So great to get them on board.
Yeah, yeah. JC, would you tell us about your latest opportunity at the Playwright Center? And then I'll
Yeah,
folks questions.
totally. Yes, so I was super lucky to, I think one of the great things about being an apprentice at the Playwright Center is, you become an affiliated writer afterwards, and so you are sort of um you're able to apply for lots of opportunities that are in the Playwright Center that are just available to affiliated writers, which is like different workshop series, the public season. Even if you're not a core writer or you weren't a Jerome Fellow, which is it's a really great opportunity. And so in May actually. So I was part of the Playwright Center's 2024-2025 public season with a play called Mortals, which is about these two siblings who find out that their grandmother, after she died, wanted to be turned into mushrooms. And so it's like a fake documentary play about that uh experience. And I really, when I was a core apprentice, I had like a great time with my workshop. And then I felt extremely lucky to be sort of like given the like sort of like full unmitigated power of the Playwright Center, where we had like a 30-hour workshop. Like we were working with like some technical elements. You get a design dramaturg. So we were even able to incorporate like some video elements and projection elements into the reading, which was like not anything I expected at all. And it was actually just like, I don't know, it was like really magical, honestly. Abby, we're sort of like when I'm in Minneapolis, I'm just sort of like walking around. We were there in like the second week of May, so like the whole city was manic because like it was sunny and everyone was like, "We're leaving hibernate," so like the lilacs were blooming. I felt like I was in a commercial, for the city for the 10 days that I was there, which was lovely, right? But also like I don't know, I think the Playwright Center is so good at being flexible and thinking about what the playwright needs. Like, we were like, instead of having 6 actors and a stage directions reader, can we just have 7 actors and we're gonna figure out the stage directions a different way? And they were like, yes. And then like we were trying to figure out, I was like, okay, so we have like this very specific, little amount of technical elements. And then like the tech director was like, well, we could try this and we can try this. You know, I've never worked with a tech director who was like, I have ideas about how to make this happen instead of being like, I'm going to put on the brakes. Um, there's just like such a wonderful energy, and people come in feeling really like excited about the play. Kind of like in every role and every stage. And so like I was able to rewrite a lot and we were able to like really experiment with a bunch of stuff, which was really great. And it was a very interesting, to be one of like the last readings that's going to be in that building. Especially because it's like very much a play about death and like the what we do after that and like closure and what that means to us. Um, and so yeah, it was a great opportunity and like truly would not have happened if I hadn't been a core apprentice because that was my gateway into the building, so to speak. Um, but yeah, it was wonderful. It's like I don't know, like I think when I'm talking to like playwrights I know who are like my friends and colleagues, we're always talking about like, you know, what you should keep applying for. Like it's like people get something and then they go do it. And like, you're like your one person goes and does this and then they come back and they're like, it's okay, or it's like fine, or like you should keep doing it, but like, there was this and this and this. And when it comes to the Playwright Center, I'm always like, just keep doing it because I think however, like there's just like so many more doors I think that will open in like so many different ways, right? You can't know the future. And whether it's like coming back or like the connections that are made there or being like, now I'm gonna live in the Twin Cities forever. Whatever happens. I think there's just like a great it's just sort of like it's a great step for like anybody to do if they're able to do it. So I think that's all. I think that's it.
No, that's beautiful. And, as you're saying, JC, and as Abby mentioned before, all these programs that we have, there are so many ways for folks to engage with Playwright Center. Definitely, as you're saying, JC, apply. You can get feedback on your application so you can learn from it. And also, people are reading your scripts. People who work in the industry are reading your plays. It's very hard to get people to read your plays and certainly to get to them to read them deeply. And not only are they reading your plays and reading them deeply, they're giving feedback and you can have access to that. So, and I will also say that this has happened before where core apprentice playwrights have applied, and one of the readers who has a company somewhere said, "Hey, I loved this play. I would love to read the rest of it. Can you put me in touch with the playwright once this process is over?" And whether or not that applicant got the core apprenticeship, it sort of is beside the point because they made a connection that they wouldn't have made if they hadn't applied. So I think there are always important reasons to apply. And we also have this membership program that's open to anyone at any level, and provides a lot of what we're already talking about, certainly the play submission opportunities database, but also community mentorship opportunities and lots of other ways to learn and expand as writers. I'm going to jump into some of these questions. Carrie asks, what was the best advice you were given as a new playwright? Do any of you have some good advice that you would share?
I would love to answer this because I use this a lot when talking to people, and it was something that Dominique said to me. We were sitting at dinner, and she literally was like, "Stop trying to get like people her level or like more experienced writers to notice you." She was like, she was coming up as a playwright, she was like, I would be in New York, and there would be so many people trying to get Susan Laurie Parks to just like read their work. And she's like, stop doing that. She said, build with the people around you. And she kind of gave me a little she was like at the time before she blew up as a playwright, she was working as a teaching artist. And she said that she was working with this other teaching artist, and he would bring in these little songs. And then, one day, like the songs he was bringing in to work, and they would talk about, like, Let Alone, it went into In the Heights, and it was Lin-Manuel Miranda. And then she ended up also building stuff, building community with Camila Forbes, who now runs the Apollo in New York. And so I really took that to heart. And when I was in Los Angeles, I had these little artist salons that I would put together in my apartment. And just being able to form community with actors, with directors, with writers that are around you is going to be so much more beneficial than trying to reach out to like big name people in the industry.
That's great advice. I love that. JC, did you have, oh,
I do, but there's a loud noise happening right now.
okay.
Okay, I think it's over. So sorry. I was like, there's a fire engine just fully laying on the horn right outside my apartment. Um, I would just say I think something I heard over and over again that I've really come to value is just like find the people whose like voices and opinions you trust, that like not everybody's thoughts on your play are gonna serve your play. I think that I see in a way, Zola, I thought of this because of what you're saying. It's like um sometimes I think we fall into the trap of trying to write to please everybody, like our teachers or our friends or our colleagues, and really then you end up sometimes writing a play about them. And so I would say like find people who you really trust their voices and their thoughts on your play, who understand you and your work, and that takes a long time. But yeah, I think finding that's been a very important piece of advice for me in my career and in the writing too. I really think it's very much what Zola is saying as well from Dominic.
We have another question from somebody who is asking about your first experiences working with a director. Have any of you had fears about losing control of your voice or maintaining the authenticity of your work?
Well, I can address that a little bit. I can sort of understand that anxiety, although I think in my experience, um, directors in theater aren't usually trying to like overtake your voice. I mean, that is, I think, something very beautiful about the dramatist guild is you really have a lot of rights as a writer in terms of artistic control. Maybe not as many financial and labor rights as members of other types of guilds, but you do have control um, over your words and there are lots of different types of processes. And some are, if you're devising something as a group or you're workshopping something that hasn't been fully formed, or if you're writing as a team, but largely, I, I haven't felt that any director was trying to make my voice something that it wasn't. Instead, there's sort of a shared like belief in the play, and they all the collaborators are really trying to lend their artistry to that, and it's great because I know, like, a lot of people come to playwriting from acting or from, and I like would begrudgingly act if I could not afford to, and begrudgingly direct if I couldn't like find someone else to. But I love it when I'm just writing and someone else is doing those things because they're very skilled at it, and I really respect that artistry. Um, so I don't know if that answers that question, but um, yeah, I would say if you did find yourself in a relationship where you did feel that your voice, sort of what JC was saying, wasn't respected, or they wanted it to be something that wasn't, I would trust yourself that these aren't your people.
I'm going to ask one last question. I think this is actually a great way for us to wrap this conversation, and thank you all for joining me tonight. And for the folks at home, feel free to certainly email me with questions. I run our member resources program, and that is part of the work that I do, is to answer your questions as playwrights. But the last question I'd like to ask is, can you all talk about if you're making a living as playwrights or playwright adjacent jobs, how do you balance life as a playwright and make a living? And maybe find balance. I don't know. Do you have balance in your lives? That was too much. That was a bridge too far. The first two parts you can answer.
Yeah, I've always, since graduating from undergrad in 2017, I've had jobs that are arts adjacent. So my first job was literally a teaching artist, and then it moved to working at the Fountain Theater in Los Angeles as their outreach person. And then, like I said, I worked at the Pasadena Playhouse, started in the box office, then moved to outreach, then moved to artistic associate there. I have found that, and now I work at, like I said, the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council. And while it is not in the theater anymore, I actually love the grant world a little bit more than actually working in the theater. I think when I was working in the theater, while it was great to form those connections in my early years as a playwright, I mean, with so much that was also just going on in 2020 with like We See You White American Theater and just how the state of the American theater is going right now, it was always kind of feeling like my love for the craft and like the mechanics and the economics of theater, it was always like bunching and hitting heads against each other. And so kind of pivoting into like my day job, really, it's still in the arts, but it is giving money to other artists. So I feel a great sense of purpose that my day job can also help other artists. Am I making a living as a playwright? No. If I had quit my day job right now, I would not be making like a full-on living. But I would say that everything that I do in terms of like, the fellowships that I have gotten are really great supplemental pieces. So my Jerome Fellowship my Jerome Hill Fellowship that I currently have, I actually, for the last month, was in the Carolinas doing research on the Sea Islands with the Gullah and Geechee folks for a new play that I'm writing. And the Jerome Hill Fellowship, it paid for that entire month for the most part that I was down there. So I would say, the fellowships, the residencies, that has been so supportive in supplementing my income to help me continue my artistry. And I kind of had thoughts that, I would get into being a full-time artist as a writing for film and TV. And I would say after my Jerome Fellowship with the Playwright Center, I did have a year that I was like, I'm doing the full-time artistry. And it was interesting. I was actually writing for Meow Wolf I was on their writing team at Meow Wolf. I was also acting. I was also getting fellowship money from all these different places. I have just realized that how my mental health is set up, like I can't be like scrounging for a bunch of different little jobs. Like I need a little bit more steady income. So yes, I would say finding something that is art adjacent is great. It is great to have a day job that is art adjacent.
Thank you, Zola. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Zola, JC, and Abby, for talking about your experiences. Again, if you are interested in chatting more about any of our programs, myself, Julia Brown, we are available by email and phone as well, if people still use phones. So thank you all tonight for your time with us. It's been great to know you as young artists and to watch you all grow to this really beautiful place in your journeys. And I can't wait to just keep being a part of it and watching you go. So thank you all for coming tonight. And I hope you all have a beautiful evening.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you so much.